Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy 2022. Welcome to the very first episode of the Christian Weekly this year. I'm your host, Patrick Dorrance, and it's been a while since I've recorded anything. And I know I said that when I was with my new job that I'd be a little more flexible and be able to do stuff, which turned out not to be the case because I ended up working till either 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, and I wasn't able to do anything. But now I am back. I went back to my other job because hours were more flexible than what I realized they really were. So I'm going to be getting back into the groove of recording and uploading. I'm not sure if I'm going to have a set schedule just yet. All just kind of depends on how hours work. But I'm going to try and do my best to give you guys content every week. And this is going to be more of like a historical kind of video, but I will be doing more theological videos too. But I want to thank you guys if you're here for watching. I know it's been a while. I promise I will try and do a lot better with getting stuff up and running. So with that, like I said, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit like, subscribe. If you feel inclined to do so, share this video with friends. And today I want to talk about Schism and Reformation. And I know I talked a little bit about the Reformation, but I'm going to talk some more about it. Talk about the Schism because I haven't done that yet. And just a quick disclaimer, none of the images in this video are mine. I got them from Google, so please, YouTube, don't take my video down. But anyway, thanks for watching, and let's get started. So I want to talk about the Great Schism first, which is basically, Eastern versus West, or West versus East, and how that all played out and how it all started. So the Great Schism is also called the East-West Schism, or the Schism of 1054, and this marked the first major split in Christianity, because Christianity was all under the same roof at this point. There weren't multiple denominations, it was just one denomination, just one group. And key players in this are Pope Leo IX and Patriarch Michael Cerularius, though the Western leader and Patriarch in the East. Notice the difference there. And churches involved are, Roman Catholic Church is what we're going to designate it, and Orthodox churches in the East, so Eastern, Greek, and Russian. So cause, there were multiple, but the biggest cause was the Pope claimed universal jurisdiction and authority, while the Orthodox Church believed ecclesiastical matters should be decided by a council of bishops. So the East believed that decisions shouldn't be made by one person, it should be decided on by a group. Though the East would still honor the Pope and be like, yeah, we still have respect for you, we're going to honor you, but eventually the Eastern churches broke off, and all the churches in the West formed the Roman Catholic Church. So some events that led to the schism one of them was Emperor Diocletian, divided the Roman Empire into the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, also called the Byzantine Empire. And this was caused mostly by cultural differences and trying to keep things together. So there was an emperor in the West, an emperor in the East. And there were also smaller schisms that took place before the Great Schism. These were just smaller groups breaking off, nothing super big. There were a lot of other factors such as using images in worship, the language. The West used Latin, while the East was Greek. There was also debates on the divinity of Christ, and there were other issues, of course, but the one sealing power was full authority of the Pope, or what we call papal supremacy. So that was the biggest issue there was that caused all this. And the two churches after the divide, well, not just two, there were other ones, but the East and the West, they all remained on friendly terms until the Fourth Crusade, where Crusaders brutally sacked Constantinople in 1204. So there went any, relations for a very, very long time. So there was a healing process that started. The first attempt at reconciliation was the Second Council of Lyon in 1274, so 70 years after Constantinople was attacked. But this council was rejected by Eastern bishops. They didn't have any interest at this point in time in trying to heal. But relations did begin improving in the 20th century, especially with the Catholic Orthodox Joint Declaration of 1965. So what this did was recognize validity of sacraments in Eastern churches. Both churches removed any mutual excommunications and pronounced desired reconciliation on both sides. So there's still a lot of healing going on, but they're in a lot better spot than they were back then. So didn't really have a whole lot on the Great Schism. I mean, it was pretty self-explanatory. The East disagreed with a lot of what the Western Church was doing, didn't like it, broke off. Now you've got basically two versions of Christianity. You have Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Whether it was Eastern, Greek, or Russian, basically did have two groups, but not really a whole lot to talk about there. Some people do say the schism started or had issues leading up to it before that. The church did have the Roman Church did have some problems with burning heretics at the stake, quote unquote heretics. Probably just people who didn't agree with them, but old Catholicism, what are you going to do? But next I want to move into the Protestant Reformation, which is probably the most well-known thing to happen in Christian history. Of course, the schism was, a big deal, but the Protestant Reformation, I think, was an even bigger deal. Well, let's get into that. That was basically Catholics versus everybody else. So if you weren't Catholic, you were some other group. So the start of the Reformation usually was started October 31st, 1517, which a lot of people today call Reformation Day, Protestant Christians, and a lot of them actually celebrate this instead of Halloween because they claim, going out dressing up as Iron Man and getting candy from your neighbor is satanic. So, I mean, if they want to do that, that's on them. I mean, I don't really care if you don't want to celebrate Halloween, that's your problem. But, so yeah, it's the start of the Reformation, and it was a European movement initially aiming to reform beliefs and practices of the Catholic Church. So they weren't aiming to break off and start their own thing. They wanted to change things within the Catholic Church. It was actually a very remarkable move that they made. So Martin Luther, this guy right here, who was actually an Augustinian monk, posted his 95 Theses on a church door in the university town of Wittenberg. So doing this was actually very common practice. It was basically an invitation to debate. So by nailing these theses to the door, Martin Luther basically said, hey, come debate me on these 95 topics, and let's go somewhere with them. And he actually gained a lot of support in German states, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, Scotland, and parts of France. So a lot of people were seeing this and like, hey, let's get behind this. Because there were a lot of people who were not happy with the Catholic Church at this time. Medieval Catholicism was super corrupt. I'd say probably more corrupt than today. I mean, there's corruption in the Catholic Church nowadays, don't get me wrong, but you're going to find that anywhere. But medieval, it was probably way worse. And a lot of people actually consider Martin Luther to be the most devout Catholic of them all because of how badly he wanted to reform his church and make it so it wasn't corrupt, which is actually a very, very respectable thing. So results, well, our boy Martin Luther was excommunicated, and a lot of hope for reform was lost. So, the Protestants, as they were called, left the Catholic Church. Protestant basically means protesting the Catholic Church. If you're, not Catholic, you're most likely a Protestant. And this actually led to Lutheran churches in Germany, Reformed churches in Switzerland and the Netherlands, Presbyterian churches in Scotland, and Anglican churches in England. So it did lead to the birth of a lot of different forms of Christianity, which has evolved into thousands upon thousands today. So I want to name some key players in the Reformation. Obviously, we had a picture of Martin Luther on one of the other slides. He is called the father of the Reformation. Then we have Huldrych Zwingli, I believe that's how you pronounce his first name. This guy right here, he was a Swiss theologian and leader of Reformation movements in Switzerland. Next we have John Calvin here. was a French theologian and reformer and founder of the Presbyterian Church. Calvin is actually very well known for the doctrine of Calvinism, which is well known for predestination. He actually did leave France due to religious persecution, settled in Geneva, which Geneva at the time under Calvin was actually a theocracy per se. So that's a pretty interesting thing there. You have John Knox right next to him. He was actually a disciple of Calvin and established Calvinistic Protestantism in Scotland. So that's how the Presbyterian Church got there. And then we have Henry VIII, this guy here. He's the founder and leader of the Anglican Church after his excommunication from the Catholic Church. Basically, the big reason he wanted a divorce, and the Catholic Church said no, can't do that. So he had the Archbishop of Canterbury do the divorce for him, and well, he got excommunicated and said, fine, let's make my own. And the King of England was basically the head of the church. So that's how that worked out. And yeah, the Catholic Church today is still very, don't do divorces. The Bible says you can get one under the sole circumstance of sexual immorality. But still, nowadays, if, I got married Catholic and then I ended up getting a divorce, in the secular eyes of the public, they'd be like, yeah, they're divorced. The Catholic Church will be like, nope, you're still married. You can get what's called an annulment, and the church will say, yep, this is null and void. You're no longer a thing, so you're separate now. But back then, church said, yeah, no divorces at all. So, interesting way of forming a new church, Henry. Good job. That was a joke, but anyway, now this doesn't have to do with Reformation. Now, this is actually ecclesial traditions and other Catholics. So yes, there's more than just Roman Catholicism or rites or traditions. So obviously you have Latin, which is the Roman Church, and that actually, I believe, has 1.3 billion members worldwide. It's the largest Christian group in the world. But then you have some other ones. You have Armenian, you have Byzantine, also called Greek Orthodox or Byzantine Catholic. I cannot talk today, I'm sorry. There's Coptic, Ethiopian, there's East Syriac or Chaldean, West Syriac, and Maronite. Now, these 7 are just as Catholic as the Roman Church. The only big difference is they're not under the Pope. They don't believe in papal supremacy. So that's really the only difference. Other than that, they're just as Catholic as the Roman Church. These guys here these are Maronite Catholics. So if you've seen, a Roman Catholic priest, a lot of similarity. You got the collar. See what looks to be a bishop in the back, maybe. But then you have other Catholic groups such as Reformed Catholic Church and Independent Catholic Christian Church, which, see, Reformed, no, they were not practicing Reformed theology. These two groups are both basically progressive Christian churches. As you can see, I'm a woman up here, the book and everything, and in the article, this lady was actually ordained a priest. I don't know names. Like I said, I grabbed it off Google. I think it was linked to an article. I'm not trying to out anybody or, bash anyone. But these two churches do ordain women. They are both LGBT affirming. I'm not sure what their stance on abortion is. I'm going to hope it's anti-abortion. But the Reformed Church on their website even says, excuse me, traditionally Catholic and then something progressive. So they have the more liberal ideas, which really do not fall under, biblical Christianity. Because you look at the Roman Church, or really any of these 8 traditions, they're all going to agree that, marriage is between one man and one woman, that homosexuality is wrong, just like the majority of Bible-believing Protestant groups. But they're fine with it. The independent one down here actually had a thing up on their website I looked at, and they, are standing with the trans community. So that they're not fully following Bible, sadly. But, I'm not here to debate that or anything. I'm just giving the facts. I'm not trying to bash these two groups. But then you have at the very bottom, traditional Roman Catholicism. Now, I'm going to use my local diocese as an example. Gaylord is the seat of the Diocese of Gaylord. So that's where our cathedral is. St. Mary Our Lady of Mount Carmel's Cathedral is in Gaylord. If I'm going to go to Mass, I'm going to go there. Now, a lot of people think that St. Mary's is the only Catholic church in Gaylord. It's actually not. There is a traditional Roman Catholic church just on the outskirts, Our Lady of the Snows Catholic Parish. Now, it's a tiny, tiny little church, and it's traditional Catholicism. Now, the difference between traditional Catholicism and Catholicism now is the traditional one does everything the church did before Vatican II. So it doesn't follow anything of what Vatican II did. It's pre-Vatican II. So the modern Roman Catholic Church is post-Vatican II. Traditional is pre-Vatican II. So pretty interesting there. I don't know if they still are under the Pope or not. I'd assume not if they're not doing the Vatican stuff, but it's a pretty interesting concept. So yeah, there is a lot more than just, Roman Catholicism. There's a lot of Catholicism. And then here we have Protestant denominations. And they're pretty interesting. Like I said, there's a lot. There's thousands upon thousands. Some, you have to go somewhere else to find. My town, other than Catholic, we have Missouri Synod Lutheran, a Wisconsin Synod Lutheran, and Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. We have a Free Methodist and a United Methodist. We have, I believe, only 2 Baptist churches, maybe a third one. But one's a King James only, the other one is not, but they do use King James. We have an Episcopal Church. We have an Assembly of God. We do have an Evangelical Free Church, which I believe is just non-denominational. We've got a lot. We even have a Latter-day Saint meeting house, and a Seventh-day Adventist Church, and a Jehovah's Witness Hall. So I got a lot of stuff in my town. But anyway, Lutherans, like I said, you have different synods. Right here, this picture is actually an example of Missouri Synod Lutheran. And if you look at the way they're dressed, you can see, wearing collars and everything. Missouri Synod is liturgically very, very similar to Catholicism. There's actually a saying my mom has that Lutherans are 1 rosary bead shy of Catholics, when really it should be a whole rosary shy because they don't even use the rosary. But you know what I'm getting at. So there's that. There's also Wisconsin Synod. I don't know much about them, but as far as I know, they are way more strict than Missouri Synod. And then you have Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, which is a more progressive, liberal denomination. We have one, and they do have a female pastor. We do have one of those. There are Methodists, primarily the United Methodist Church and Free Methodist. There was a church I was going to for a little bit that is a Free Methodist, but they don't operate as a Methodist per se. And we do have a United Methodist in town, and there's actually been a lot of things going on with the United Methodist Church, worldwide, where it's, division between the whole LGBT thing. Half is affirming, the other half is not. A lot of that going on. There's Baptist. Like I said, we do have, I think there is only 2 Baptist churches in my town. I've heard of a third one, but I haven't seen it anywhere. But we do have 2 that I'm aware of. There is one Baptist church, and I actually know the pastor. I haven't been to it. And his description of the church is they are conservative with the scripture. They use King James, but they are not a King James only group. And then we do have a King James only Baptist church in town. I haven't been to it. But from what I've heard there, it's pretty interesting. We do have a Presbyterian church. It's actually pretty close to my house. Maybe a couple miles, but I haven't been to that one. It's back in the woods somewhere. I have driven by it. Nice little, woodland church. Back in the woods. Pentecostal, an Assembly of God, which this picture right here is actually inside of a Pentecostal church. And these guys are stereotypical for, dancing and, speaking in tongues and stuff. I don't really know a whole lot about these guys, except I know a lot of people say, yeah, those guys are insane. That's all I've heard. That's very stereotypical. I don't believe that of you guys to be insane. If any of you watching it are Pentecostal, but they're a lot more energetic from what I understand. You have non-denominational, which the way I see it is basically just Baptist with extra steps. I mean, Baptists, there isn't just one, layman of, oh, I'm a Baptist. There are so many different versions of Baptist. And so non-denominational basically is, yeah, we're a Christian church, but we don't have like a set of like every single doctrine is basically figure it out for yourself kind of thing. Which non-denominational has basically become its own denomination. And then down here at the bottom there are Seventh-day Adventists. And I don't really know much about them. I probably should have done some research, but I believe they view themselves more as a restorationist group. And I believe these two guys as well. So I have Jehovah's Witness and Latter-day Saints, or Mormons. And I don't know why, because I was on a website with a bunch of different lists of Protestant groups, and these two really are not Protestant, because they didn't protest and break off from the Catholic Church. Jehovah's Witness was founded on its own thing during the First Great Awakening, I do believe, which I honestly don't even consider Jehovah's Witnesses Christians, because they deny Christ's divinity. Like if you look in John 1:1, and pretty much any Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now they use a translation of the Bible called the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. They don't even call it a Bible. In John 1:1 in that, and I'm sure it says it other places too, but in John 1:1 of that translation, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. So they completely deny Christ's divinity, or view him as a separate God in general. I've heard both. So I really don't consider Jehovah's Witnesses Christians. That's kind of judgy, but if you're going to deny Christ's divinity, you really can't call yourself that, in my opinion. And then you have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons. I mean, they're not actually called Mormons. It's more of a derogatory term. Well, these guys are not Protestant either, and I've actually talked to a church president, not a church president, a mission president. Because any missionary serving up in Michigan is part of the Lansing mission. And I have done a Zoom call with their mission president in this area. Because there were a few times I thought about joining, but it never happened. I've been to a few services, and they're nice, but I don't agree with their doctrine at all. Within like the next 10 years or so, maybe not even 10, maybe, I don't know how long, but within this generation, that church is going to get, 200 years old. And it's so young, you can easily research it, and you're going to realize that, yeah, this is not a church actually founded by Christ, but that's besides the point. And so they're not Protestants, they're restorationists. Their church history teaches that a guy named Joseph Smith, at the age of 14, was trying to figure out which church is right, and he went out to a grotto to pray after reading verse in James. I don't remember the verse. I know it was if any of you lack of knowledge, ask of God. I think it's James 1:5, but I don't remember exactly. I think it was 1:5, but anyway, he went out, he prayed, asked God for wisdom, and he actually had a vision of God and Christ. And they told him, yeah, none of these churches are right. It's all apostate. They're all wrong. And later on formed what he claimed to be the restored church. And ended up there was a bunch of different doctrines that just were not biblically accurate. We got the Book of Mormon. So there's just a lot of stuff, but they're not. The point is they're not Protestant. They're restorationist. So I don't know why these two were on there, really. And I'm kind of questioning Seventh-day Adventists too, but that's for another time. I'm not trying to denomination bash here. I'm just, giving info and kind of giving my opinion. So these here are my sources. And this one here is for the Reformed Catholic Church, and this one here is for the Independent Catholic Church, inclusive Catholic. So that kind of tells you what's going to go on with that. And these are all my sources for everything I grabbed. If you want to check out all the different Protestant groups, this one right here, you want to look at that. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching. I know it's been a while. I hope you guys enjoyed. I promise I will try to get more out there. If you like the video, hit like and subscribe if you want to. If you don't, not a problem, I understand. Do keep an eye out for future content. Excuse me. Keep an eye out for future content. It's going to be there. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Hope, start to 2022 has been good so far. I know it's only, like the 3rd. But, hey, you know what? There's still a lot of time. So, yeah, go out, make the best of your day. And I hope you guys have a great day. Remember, read your Bible, go to church, do what's right. And I will see you guys later. Have a great day, and God bless.